We have 50 minutes to talk about a 4-hour epic journey, so I guess we should go ahead and get started. My name is Rebecca Johnson. I am the co-host of a podcast called Supergirl Radio, which talks about the CW Supergirl TV series and all things Cars Rail, movies, TV shows, comics, all that kind of stuff. So I do that, and I'm also have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/DuckMilk Prod, where I've talked a lot about the Snyder Cut, and I also talk quite a bit about Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. So if you're into that, you can check that out. I also have some business cards up here in case you want to keep in touch with me. But I'm joined today by my good friend Sark. Sark, you want to tell people about yourself?
Yes, my name is Sark Sarkeesian, and I do not have a podcast, nor do I have a YouTube channel. So there. No, but my credentials are that I am a hardcore Batman fan, and as a result, I'm a hardcore DC fan. And I tell people that I was born with a severe Batman bias. I suffer from that, and it shows up in my speech or things that I tweet. And I'm just glad to be here because this has been one of my most recent passions, has been this film. So yeah, thank you for letting me be a part of this.
Yeah, it's funny. Every time we get together, you're usually, sporting Batman stuff.
Sure,
I'm
of
usually,
course.
it just so happens I'm always representing Superman. So, so that's kind of funny. So this panel is hopefully going to be interactive. We have our lovely assistant Benita here. So if you have any questions or comments about anything, just let her know. And we would love to have an interaction because the Snyder Cut was for the fans. So we waited 4 years for it. And so if you guys have any thoughts to share, please feel free to. We'd love to hear what you think. And I guess one of the things we could start off talking about, Sark, is the fact that it did take about 4 years to get the Snyder Cut released. There was a big movement that went behind it, if you're not aware. It was driven by social media. And I was curious, did you ever think that the Snyder Cut would actually get released?
No, honestly, I didn't. The first time that I even gave a thought to it, I remember vividly seeing it on the 17th of November, 2017.
Yeah.
And we went, me and my lovely wife, Benita, and I was so excited. And I try not to get involved in too much detail, but we went, and I remember leaving very confused, and I was embarrassed to say anything to her because I had built the movie. She had jumped on board. We'd been dating, and were married at that point about a year and a half, roughly. And so she was immersed into the Snyderverse right off the rip, like our fourth week of dating. Batman v Superman. At first Man of Steel, then Batman v Superman. So hear all the anticipation, and I said, hey, all the loose ends are going to be tied up. Can't wait. And we went and we watched it, and I was so puzzled at what I was watching, and I didn't want to confess to her that I was frustrated. And I remember the next morning, it really bugged me, and I was just looking on social media. For me, that's Twitter, and I saw someone tweet hashtag release the Snyder Cut.
Yeah, it was pretty early on.
I mean, the next morning, and I liked it and retweeted it. And I remember thinking it will never happen. But I was on board fully at that moment. But yes, honestly, I did not think it would happen.
Yeah, it was weird because we were told initially that Joss Whedon was only going to come in and do some scenes to kind of tie some other scenes together. He wasn't really going to do much to it. And then right off the bat, there's a Superman scene where his face is messed up and all that. So I kind of realized at that point the movie that we saw in the theaters was not the one that was supposed to be released. And yeah, you mentioned that big day in November. I don't know if people are aware. Do y'all know what we're talking about? The big day on social media where everybody was tweeting release the Snyder Cut. Okay, so it looks like y'all don't know. So there was a big push. We had been hearing, fans had been hearing from kind of high up from people who were in the know that there was going to be a day. I guess it was November 2019.
Right, 2 years after the release.
Yeah, so there was going to be a big push to do a big social media campaign, and it was very important. And that's what we were kind of told by some people who knew what was going on. And I remember that day because everybody was trying to tweet, release the Snyder Cut. And then kind of in the middle of the day, we started seeing some big things happen. Gal Gadot had tweeted something, a new still from the Snyder Cut version. Then Ben Affleck posted, release the Snyder Cut. Jason Momoa put something on Instagram. Ray Fisher tweeted something. I even saw creative people like Damon Lindelof, who didn't have anything to do with the Snyder Cut, but he's a big screenwriter and TV showrunner, he posted about releasing the Snyder Cut. So everything, everything that was happening that day felt like something big was happening. And we found out later that this was a way to show HBO Max and Warner Brothers the demand for it. I think the Snyder Cut was like the most tweeted about movie ever, and it had not even been released, which was the funny part about it.
Insane. Yeah.
So that day in November 2019 was a big deal, and that's, I think, how we got the Snyder Cut. I was not, I was hopeful, but I thought it might be like a Superman 2 Daughterverse thing where it might take 10, 15, 30 years to get it. So I was really surprised we got it within about 4 years, and I think it was due to the pandemic largely, because HBO Max needed some content, some original exclusive content to put out there. So thank you, HBO Max. If you did not exist, we would not have it. So I always thought that was a good way to do it if they did it via streaming. So I guess one of the things we could talk about, since we mentioned the Justice League version, and the differences that were in that film, because it's Zack Snyder's Justice League is an entirely different film. It's an entirely different film. There are characters that are in it that weren't in the one in 2017. There are people who die who lived in the 2017 version. So it's an entirely different film. So I guess Sark, and if anybody has any comments that you want to share with us, what were the biggest big differences that you thought between the two versions of the movie we got? What do you think was improved in Zack Snyder's Justice League?
How much time do we have? Yeah, when you tipped me off that this is where the conversation was going to start, I said to myself, I am not going to rewatch Justice League. Just to answer this question, I'm going to have to go by memory. I've been avoiding it like the plague. I don't want to dominate the conversation. There are so many places you could start with in terms of the difference and the improvement. I was just so frustrated watching the movie. I never thought I would experience anything like that. I had heard the rumor, for example, that Danny Elfman was brought on board, and I thought, well, I love Danny Elfman, and I mean, he did a phenomenal job back in the day, but how do you reconcile that style of music with the style that we heard clearly defined in Man of Steel and Batman v Superman? And I thought, well, hey, if anybody could do it, probably he could do it. And then I was hearing rumblings of, well, he's going to introduce, Batman only has one theme. And I remember thinking, I like you, dude, but that is so incredibly arrogant. Why would you say such a thing? It's so dismissive of every other Batman-oriented thing that had come down the pike. But I thought, well, maybe he knows what he's talking about. There was talk that he would introduce the old Superman theme from John Williams. And I thought, okay, maybe that'll push some nostalgic buttons. He has a way of incorporating it and making it sound like the Zimmer style, maybe, or the Junkie XL style. From the minute the movie started, I said, wow, it's like retro feel. I've gone back to the 1980s and I'm watching a Justice League movie, which not that would have been bad in the 1980s. But then to watch it, and it had no connection to the universe that we had seen. So for me, the music just took me out of it completely. And I tried not to gripe while I watched the movie. I tried to give it a shot. But watching Zack Snyder's cut, there were scenes that were similar, obviously, because the best things about the Justice League version are the things that Zack Snyder shot to begin with. So they were more enhanced, there was more depth, more feel, but the music. So one in particular, one scene that I can reference is the Wonder Woman scene toward the beginning of the film.
Yeah.
This is not a slam against Danny Elfman. I love Danny Elfman. I love the contributions he's made to the DC universe. But to watch those evil bad guys march up the steps of that building, bum, 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 it was comical. It felt very much like Batman '89. And it took me out of the moment, but it was so ominous and dark and mysterious and brooding when we watched Zack Snyder's Justice League. And I remember commenting to you, I don't even know if we can stomach the other version, but if we were to go back, you would see what a contrast.
Music makes such a difference. And I think that Zack Snyder's Justice League does a good job of showing what kind of, especially with the music, how much the music makes such a difference in telling the story and setting a mood, because to your point, that scene is so much more threatening with Junkie XLs. I mean, they're terrorists, they have bombs, they're threatening kids, there's little girls in there, and it's really, I mean, that should be scary, and you should be worried for those people in there. So it definitely does make a difference.
Oh, yes, huge difference.
Yeah, and I also thought one of my favorite bits of the score is when the Flash does his time travel thing there at the end, and the music in there with the sort of the drums and that feel to it, it makes it feel so epic.
So much anticipation. It heightens the level of emotion at that moment too. Yes, huge difference. I mean, you can't even begin to contrast the difference.
And also, Junkie XL created a Justice League theme. One of the disappointing aspects of the Justice League version with Danny Elfman is it seemed like he was just reusing other bits of music. Not even just his DC stuff, but I think he pulled from the Avengers theme.
See, that's what I've always wanted to ask people. Did you feel like you were listening to the Avengers theme?
I think it was part of the Avengers theme in there. And so it was nice in the Zack Snyder Justice League version where the Justice League actually had a musical motif that was also used, you might notice it during like the history lesson and the Steppenwolf versus Amazons to sort of demonstrate that these are groups of people trying to save the world, teaming up together. And so I think that's a really, Junkie XL just made such an improvement on the music.
Yes. Couldn't agree more.
So were there any other, I know you're a big Batman fan, were there any bits of Batman, Ben Affleck's Batman in there that were improved?
Yes, look, when I say something, I don't want it to sound like I'm trying to be overly critical of the Justice League version. I used to say right after we watched it, and I think you may remember this, that it's too bad that film was not released as a standalone film, say like in the early 90s. I think we would have just oohed and awed over it if it was not connected to anything else. But because it was promised to deliver on a continuation of the story arcs that we had seen in the previous two films, it just left me feeling flat, and obviously a lot of other people. But when it comes to Batman, I just remember the feeling I had when I saw him. And I'm not going to have the line right, but I don't not like you.
Right.
In another film, in another place, that might have seemed cute, and I'm not trying to take anything away from it, but in this world, that was so jarring. So yes, everything with Batman so much more improved. It was consistent from the previous film. It truly felt like a sequel to Batman v Superman. And for those of us who adore that film and love it more and more with each passing year, yes, it did pay off tremendously. Some of my favorite scenes, I know we're not talking about that right now, but as the team or the team members that exist at that moment exit the Nightcrawler.
Oh yeah.
It gave me chills. And then of course, the scenes with when they're suiting up to go in for the last battle. And there's that kind of a unique Batman-esque theme. There were even elements that reminded me of at times of The Dark Knight Rises, which has always been one of my favorite films too. So yeah, to see the Batman as portrayed by Ben Affleck, it meant so much to me to see him continue that story arc and his character development. Yes.
Yeah, you mentioned the Nightcrawler, and we also in Zack Snyder Justice League got to see much more of the Flying Fox.
Yes.
The sort of the plane vehicle that they all get into to go fight the final battle, which I thought was cool. Bruce and Diana get into the Flying Fox, and that's how she tells him the story of the history lesson.
Yes, I love
so that was nice to see the inside of that vehicle.
Though the movie, I don't think, addressed it. Has anyone ever wondered why would a Batman-themed vehicle be called the Flying Fox? Does anybody know? Yes. Yes.
Correct.
The largest, I believe, the largest species of bat. So appropriate that this massive troop carrier. Yes, very good. You get extra points for that one.
Yeah, so I think one of my favorite things, I know we mentioned the Wonder Woman versus the terrorist battle. I so needed, and not to disparage Wonder Woman 1984, it's a perfectly fine movie. I was a little disappointed with that movie because Wonder Woman at the end saves the day by sitting on the floor and giving a hope speech, and that was kind of not my thing. But then when we got Zack Snyder's Justice League, she's tearing up those terrorists and she's going after Steppenwolf, and I was like, yeah, this is Wonder Woman. So I was really like, that really made it up to me. I really loved Zack Snyder's portrayal of Diana because she's such not only just a strong character in general, she's kicking butt. I mean, she's going out and doing all these superheroic things that only Wonder Woman can do. There's a moment where, this is from Zack Snyder's Justice League that we didn't get back in 2017, where she gets the arrow from Hippolyta and she goes down into this little cave to see the dark side art, which is beautiful. But she drops down in this gorgeous outfit. She's dressed up and she drops down in heels, and you hear the heels clink on the ground. And only Wonder Woman could do that. No woman in here could do that, because our feet would start bleeding. It would be disastrous. We would be in so much pain. But Wonder Woman, she does it so effortlessly. And so that's a nice little touch that I really enjoyed out of Wonder Woman.
I mean, white heels, white dress.
Yeah, and she's going into a really dungy place. She doesn't get dirty, no blemishes, her makeup is perfect.
The first time we watched that through, Benita looked at me and she said, "Babe, she just did that in heels."
So Wonder Woman, I think, was greatly improved for me in Zack Snyder's Justice League. It was really nice to see her get to be let loose and get to see that full sequence. We got to see a little bit of it in the 2017 version, but she really let loose in Zack Snyder's Justice League. And I also really liked the return of, I think what Zack Snyder does really well is he respects these heroes so much, in my opinion. He treats them as if they are these mythological beings. And I know a lot of people had problems with the scene with Aquaman in, I guess, Iceland, where the local townspeople are singing the song as he leaves. But I loved that so much, because it showed that these people had such a respect for him. They had so much gratitude for Aquaman. I mean, you see in the footage how hard it was for Bruce to hop on that horse in the snow and crawl across these caverns. And nobody else could get there except for Arthur. And so it was really cool to see. It maybe went on maybe a little too long. I might have cut it a little shorter. But to see that kind of thing, that return to a mythological sense with Zack Snyder. Joss Whedon, I think, he may have been mandated by the studio to make it funnier, make it jokier. But I always thought he sort of treated those characters as if they were a joke. And I didn't really appreciate that. And I think that's what Zack Snyder does so well, is that he treats them as these really important, almost godlike, but not, I wouldn't go that far, but just mythological beings that are just so superhuman, but they also have a lot of human features. They have a lot of human emotions. So that was one of the things I really appreciated. Let's see, what else can we talk about? We should talk about my boy Steppenwolf.
Oh, yeah.
One of the biggest improvements in Zack Snyder's Justice League was Steppenwolf. I don't know if anybody else feels the same way, but he was not a great villain in the Justice League version, but he actually became one of my favorite characters in Zack Snyder's Justice League. I don't know how that happened, but I loved every scene he was in. So what are your thoughts on Steppenwolf?
Even the 2D photos that we were seeing going into Zack Snyder's Justice League really didn't do it justice. I think that maybe they were a little too grainy. And I thought, well, he certainly looks different, but it just, I couldn't get a feel of how intimidating, how threatening of a character he could be. The theatrical version, like we call Justice League, I remember, again, frustration watching it. I thought, if he says "mother" one more time, it sounded so strange, and it's so heartening to know that was not part of the original script. I thought, that is just bizarre. And he looked like he just needed more rendering. The special effects were just cheesy and poorly conceived. And even then, I'm thinking, geez, poor Zack Snyder was really having a rough year. I'm thinking that he's responsible for this. But to see the new Steppenwolf, the musculature, the sleekness, the movement, everything was so vastly improved. And then I'm thinking to myself, when I see the photos, and maybe many of you did too, does he have like metal skin? I couldn't really figure out what's with all the spikiness. And then to see this almost organic quality to almost like a living armor, and how it would peel back and flex at different times as he bristled with anger. And then one of my favorite, for example, is when he's fine. I keep thinking he's impervious to arrows, or the armor is, and he's just walking around with arrows sticking out of him. And then finally he just flexes and they pop out. everything was so distinctive about him. Clearly one of the best DC villains, or villains in a comic book movie, period, in my opinion, yes. So I was so impressed with Steppenwolf. And then the voice acting, it was hard to believe we were looking at something generated by a computer, and the power of the voice acting was so sublime that you almost felt his pain, and that he had been separated from his family, his people, and his planet, and that he had really screwed up apparently at some point, just given a backstory even.
Yeah, he was a much more complicated character.
Yes, much more, yes. Just he was silly. He was silly in the first one.
Yeah, I really loved Steppenwolf because of that complication. There were points in the movie I was like, he's gone around and he's destroyed worlds for Darkseid, but I kind of feel sorry for him a little bit.
Just a tad bit, yes.
There was one moment where you could just see like his face drop after he learned, oh, I've got to do 50,000 more worlds. That's gonna cause problems for me. But he became a little bit of he did terrible things.
Mm-hmm.
But there was that weird dichotomy that he was somewhat sympathetic in parts. But there's one scene that really stuck out to me. You talk about the CGI. There's a moment where Steppenwolf is interrogating one of the Atlanteans. He throws him up against a rock, and he walks over this little kind of puddle that's in there. And when I first saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, how did they do that? Because Steppenwolf, his feet go into the puddle, and it looks so seamless. It looks so real. And they probably didn't have a lot of time from the announcement of the Snyder Cut to be able to finish that. And it's just incredible what they were able to accomplish in that short of time. And I remember, I can't remember which YouTube channel it is, but there was a special effects YouTube channel that actually analyzed how they did that moment with the puddle. So I was glad that like real special effects people noticed that too. But I was blown away by Steppenwolf because he had so much more going on story-wise, and we got to really see what he was capable of, and especially how threatening he was. He was a very scary character. But it was nice to see like the Amazons put up a real good fight against him.
Yes.
And so like that sequence in particular in Zack Snyder's Justice League is much more dramatic and sad in parts because of course we see a little bit more of Hippolyta having to make that decision to shut the doors, and we see that big not temple, but that big Themysciran building fall off into the sea.
Yes.
You get to see more emotion from those characters having interacted with Steppenwolf, and then she has to mourn the loss of some of the Amazons. So Steppenwolf just made Zack Snyder's Justice League, I think, so much better this time around.
Absolutely, yes. And on that note, I love the way that Zack Snyder's always honoring the ladies.
Oh, yes.
He's so much about female empowerment, yes.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about people who say that Zack Snyder doesn't treat female characters right, because I've never seen a female character in one of his films who's not awesome. So I guess since we talked about Steppenwolf, Darkseid showed up in this film.
Oh, yes.
Who knew? So I thought Darkseid originally was just going to be like a little tease. I thought we were just going to see him in that mural, and maybe like Steppenwolf would talk about him a little more. I didn't know he was going to be such a significant character.
I was shocked by that, yeah.
Yeah, so what did you think about the portrayal of Darkseid, his look, the voice acting?
Yeah, if Steppenwolf was intimidating, Darkseid was downright frightening. Yes, even a more immense figure. Even though I have to admit, I love the fact that the ancient heroes were able to take him down the way that they were able.
Oh yeah, Darkseid passes out.
Yeah, Ares, yeah.
And the god of war.
Yes, the god of war, yes. Took him out and it wasn't able to come back from that so quickly. But yes, Darkseid, the voice acting, Ray Porter, I believe, is the voice actor. Just incredible job. And we need, here we go, on to restore the Snyderverse. The world does need to see more, I'm convinced, of that portrayal of Darkseid. A follow-up movie is demanded, I think, by the fans because, there's so much potential there. I want to see more of it.
Yeah, we got a lot of Apocalypse. We got to see Darkseid, Steppenwolf, Desaad was a pretty big, well, not a big character, not as big as Darkseid, but he had a significant presence. And we surprisingly also got Granny Goodness in there. She doesn't say anything, but she is represented, and that was a big, wonderful surprise to me because that opened so many doors. If they did want to continue, you could do Granny Goodness and the Female Furies. you could do so many things. So I was glad to see so much apocalyptic things that were in there. And Darkseid had a really interesting, the way that they visualized the communication device, where it was almost like a monolith.
Lava type of, yes.
That was a really, really interesting way to portray their communication devices. And I guess since we've been talking a lot about these characters, and this is a question I'll put out to y'all if you have any thoughts, which character, and this could be really hard, which character do you think in Zack Snyder's Justice League got the biggest upgrade from the 2017 version?
Cyborg.
So, yeah, so if y'all have any thoughts, let us know, and Benita will go around, but it does sound like Cyborg from a lot of people. We did get more of his story sort of fleshed out. We got to see more backstory. We got to meet his mom this time around. So that was really good to see, because I think he became one of the best characters in Zack Snyder's Justice.
Really did, and it did, without getting off on other discussions necessarily. You can understand clearly why Ray Fisher probably felt most slighted by the release of the first film, because so much was taken from his character. It was almost like a mini movie within the movie. It was so deeply fleshed out. But yeah, I don't want to step on anyone else's opportunity to share their thoughts about Cyborg or whoever they thought.
Yeah, feel free to share your thoughts. So does anybody have any thoughts about Cyborg? Anybody want to share anything? Well, one of the things I thought was great about Cyborg is that there's, and this got cut from the theatrical release, was his storyline with his father. That was such a big deal in the film, and towards the end, you see it really, that really kind of brought everything full circle, because there's a lot of father issues within the DCEU with Bruce and with Arthur in some respects, and even with Barry. So there's a lot of that going on there, and I like the way that they ended that with Silas and Victor repairing his audio recorder and listening to that. He wasn't ready to listen to it earlier in the film, but he finally listens to it at the end. I thought that was a cool use of Cyborg's powers too. He could rebuild it just using his power. But he's such a powerful character, especially in this day and age where everything is, iPhones and laptops and everything's connected through Wi-Fi. He really is powerful, and I was really glad to see that they emphasized that in Zack Snyder's Justice League with the way they showed that he could control the stock market and he could, put money in a bank account that, he could transfer things, and he could control nuclear devices and could show you back in time, history of the Nazis fighting the Mother Box. He's such a powerful character, so I was glad to see the film emphasize that. So would you agree Cyborg was the biggest upgrade?
Yes, absolutely.
That's such a hard question, because I think they all got huge upgrades. I mean, I think the Flash also got a huge upgrade. In 2017, he was sort of the comedic relief, which is fine. But Flash is also another powerful character. He can go back in time, he can change things. And I really loved Ezra Miller's Flash in Zack Snyder's Justice League. The scene with him saving Iris, beautiful, beautiful, slow motion with the music.
Yeah, music.
Just really wonderful. And that was actually a really complicated thing. I think she was wearing a wig so that they could, very gently sort of move her hair, and how the idea that the Flash has to be really careful when he's changing things in that sort of flash time that he does. That's something he has to be really careful about. And just the stuff at the end where he has to actually go back in time and save the day. So I also think the Flash got a really big upgrade.
Huge upgrade, yes. I don't think anyone saw that coming at the end. I'm sure we were not the only ones that the first several days of its release watching and thinking, what just happened? What is he about to do? What is he doing? Wait a minute. I think most people probably had that reaction, because I just don't think we anticipated that he was going to have that much control over the situation and be the hero in that moment. I don't even know where to. I'm a huge Batman fan, but this movie has probably done more to make me a fan of the other characters than I ever have been before.
And I think Ben Affleck's Batman got a big upgrade.
Oh, sure.
His whole arc from Batman v Superman, where he's kind of this guy who is sort of given up on
Mhm.
the world a little
Cynical.
bit and very cynical. And in Zack Snyder's Justice League, he's kind of a man of faith. He sort of turns the corner. He's a little more optimistic. He's willing to give people a chance and keep his promises. And so I think his character, especially you see him at the end when we get a little Martian Manhunter there, which was really cool, which was originally supposed to be Green Lantern,
Right.
but they had to change it because they weren't allowed to use Green Lantern for some reason. Nobody knows. But he gets sort of a character payoff where Martian Manhunter says, I think your parents would have been really proud of you, and that's a big deal for Bruce
Yeah,
Wayne.
it's touching.
So I think he got a big upgrade. Wonder Woman we already kind of talked about. I was also happy about Lois Lane in Zack Snyder's
Yes.
Justice League.
Yes.
She got a little bit more, her grief I thought was treated with a lot more weight. In the 2017 theatrical version, she was played for laughs,
Yes.
the thirsty comment and all
Ouch.
that, yeah.
Yeah.
So her grieving, the guy she was gonna get married to, the love of her life dies in this huge dramatic way, and that should be treated with some weight to it. And there's a moment where she picks up Superman's cape
Oh, yeah.
and sort of holds it, and that's
Mhm.
that's actually a comic book reference where Lois does that in the Death of Superman issues. So that was really nice to see. So I really enjoyed Lois in this one.
Oh, I did too, immensely. Yeah, the thirsty scene that I'm sure probably most people have seen and cringed at. Even the execution of the film quality, it felt like we were watching a sitcom.
Oh yeah, it was
And it
shot
was-
like a TV show.
Yes, it was so poorly done. Yeah, it was good to see that level of quality once again restored to her character, even Martha Kent, her character, just treated with gravity and with weight. And it did make it feel like this is a continuation of the Superman story, which that's what he had always promised. So yeah, I enjoyed seeing that.
I did feel like I knew these characters in Zack Snyder's Justice League. In the other version of the film, I was like, I don't know this guy. This is Superman? I don't know this guy. So it was nice to be able to kind of reconnect with these characters I'd already developed an affiliation for in Man of Steel and BVS. And the Lois scene that I really love is when she comes out of the coffee shop and she walks by the Daily Planet bus in the rain. She's got a black umbrella. Oh man, that is so good. Zack Snyder actually released some storyboards of that scene a long time before we actually got to see it, and so I was glad to actually get to see what he did with that because it's so beautiful. And it's actually there's a Zack Snyder cameo in that scene. He's like drawing on something in the coffee shop.
Coffee shop.
Yeah. So it was really good to see that. We got to see Lois interact with another Jimmy Olsen.
Yes, that
Mark
was cool.
McClure is in Zack Snyder's Justice. Well, he was in the Justice League version too, but he actually got to interact with Lois, which was very cool to see. Amy Adams' Lois get to interact with another cinematic Jimmy Olsen.
Yes, it was awesome. Yeah, and just in general, I can't imagine. I'm not trying to lay blame at anyone's feet, but I think most fans were watching the movie and rewatching this 4-hour extravaganza and thinking, with every passing scene, why would you want to cut that? Why would you want to cut that? Wait a minute, why would you want to eliminate that? One of the most gratifying things that I think for me was there was this push behind the scenes from what we're told to make the film more jokey, more fun. And wasn't it good to know, wasn't it gratifying to know that the funniest lines were filmed by Zack Snyder and retained for the 4-hour cut?
Yeah, there's a moment that actually really made me laugh out loud when the League is fighting Superman, or I guess Clark really, who has just been resurrected, and the Flash accidentally runs in, he gets pushed into Aquaman, and they both kind of go into the stairs, and there's a moment after all that ends where Aquaman points at him like mad, and that's the kind of organic kind of thing that you can put in there that's actually really funny, and you don't have to force it. Because it was really played by those two actors really well, and that was something that Zack Snyder's not really, I guess, known for his comedic bits, but that really, I think, played really well.
Oh, very well. I found myself laughing, just chuckling hard, belly laughs, especially around Ezra Miller's Flash. Yeah, he did bring a lot of comic relief and levity, a lightness to the film that it needed.
All right, so I guess we could talk about our favorite scenes, and if anybody here has any favorite moments or
Please
scenes
do.
From Zack Snyder's Justice League, raise your hand. We'll love to hear your thoughts on that. So Sark, did you have like a scene that you just go back to and rewatch a lot?
It depends on the day. I have a bias toward Batman, so I love the Batman stuff, obviously. But recently, I have to admit, the Flash scene with Iris, where we're introduced to Iris, and he saves her. Just the tenderness of that. And of course, I'm sorry if this sounds cheesy, but 5 years ago, I fell in love with a black woman, the first black woman I ever dated, and here I am, a white guy, and to see that interracial layer, I mean, it just tugs at the heartstrings. And so when he runs up and he's just smitten by the appearance of her, and he's trying to be so gentle and make sure that she's not hurt, as he stops to grab a hot dog to feed to the dogs that he's just met seconds before, yeah, it really got to me. I just love to watch that scene because it shows so much about his heart and where I hope his movie ends up going. So yeah, that recently has been my favorite scene.
And that's such a cool scene too, because you get to see what it's like to be the Flash. His shoes don't last.
Mm-hmm, right.
Like he has to have special shoes because if he goes into that fast flash time, I know they call it flash time on the CW TV series, I don't know if that's a common Flash term, but when he goes into his Flash abilities, he sort of comes out of his shoes, he can break through glass at a slow speed. So it's really cool to actually get to see what it's kind of like to be the Flash. I think we're sort of put in his position there. Yeah, there's so many good scenes in that 4-hour epic. I was really taken by the opening sequence. Some of the shots you can tell were like they had to try to add some things from other films, like they inserted Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor in there, and you can kind of tell like that's not as good CGI wise as it could have been. But just the idea that that's how the film started, where it like kind of goes back to Superman's death, and you get to see the effect of his scream impact the world. That to me, that was way better than seeing him talk to some kids doing their little podcasts and asking them questions about hippopotamuses, which is fine.
Yes.
Which is fine. It's fine, but that really sets the tone for the story, and it's really actually beautiful because the first thing you see is that the sort of the spear, the thing coming through. So you get a reminder that Superman is dead and this is how it's happened. And just to see like Superman is so powerful and so important to the DC universe, and to see him treated with that kind of respect, that his death would impact Atlantis, it would impact Themyscira, it would impact places all over the world, and it would actually signal to people outside of Earth that they could come in a negative way and come and invade Earth. But just to see Superman have that kind of impact and be so important like that was really refreshing to me, and I liked getting to see that.
I don't know if I'm not the comic aficionado. I'm a Batman guy, but that doesn't mean I read all the comics and know them. But the concept, was that more of a Snyder concept? The death cry, not awakening it really, the mother boxes, but alerting them to the fact that he is gone now, and that they were hiding almost in fear, and that's setting off the events. Is that more of a Snyder concept, or
That's a Snyder, because the death of Superman didn't have that.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah,
that was my understanding.
The impact of it contacting, sort of signaling to the mother boxes, I think, is a Snyder concept. But Superman and Supergirl have very loud screams. Even Streaky the Super Cat can let out a big super meow.
Wow.
So they do have powerful voices. So it doesn't stretch the imagination too much that his scream could impact everything else. But yeah, some of that was original to it. So that really that kind of drew me in right away, because one of the trademarks of Zack Snyder is that he always sets the tone in his scenes with visuals and music. So if you watch Batman v Superman or Man of Steel or Watchmen, they all start out, and I think it's a very effective way for filmmaking, because you don't have to worry about what somebody's telling you through narration or voiceover. You can just focus on the images, and for me, that puts me into the story. It helps me get in there and figure out what is happening. What am I looking at? What am I hearing? and that really immerses me into the film. And so I was glad to see that was a continuation of his filmmaking style, that he did something similar in Zack Snyder's Justice League. So I really enjoyed it. I mean, there were a lot of great scenes in that 4 hours, but I really enjoyed getting to see that. I guess one of the things we could talk about that's different with Zack Snyder's Justice League is the 4:3 ratio.
Okay.
So a lot of people nowadays are used to the 16:9, full screen on your TV. But back in the 30s and 40s, that's what you got. You got a 4:3 image, which is a square image. And nowadays, if you make it 16:9, it has the black bars on the left and right. So that's how you kind of have to convert that. So I guess that could be something we could talk about. Did that bother you in any way to see it presented differently?
The thought of it did, honestly, at first. I thought, that seems to be a strange call. But then it made more sense after watching the film. I'm going to go back and forth here. It made sense watching the Justice League version. We were used to that ultra wide screen with Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. And this was not as wide. Like when you watch it on your TV screen, it didn't have the black bars above and on the top and the bottom. But everything seemed to be so close, like just unusually close. Like it just didn't even look pleasant. It wasn't even attractive to the eye. Now we know that he had butchered the original ratio and had cut off the top and the bottom. And that's why we felt like we were just in all to fill the screen. And I understand now, at least I think I understand, the epicness, the largeness of the film. This wasn't about horizons. And because, widescreen, ultra widescreen is great for horizons and showing a lot of things going on in multiple places.
Landscapes.
Yes, a lot of horizontal lines. It plays well. But this was all about the vertical. Wow, look at the size of that guy. Look at the size of the attack. Look at what's happening. Everything is like, wow. And so he played that well. I think that was a very wise choice. And as soon as the movie started, I was totally unaware of the so-called black bars on the sides. I was just completely immersed into what was going on. So I thought it was an excellent call. I get it now.
Yeah, it's definitely different for superhero movies, especially. I mean, we're all used to that 16:9 aspect ratio, but Zack Snyder did say that he wanted to do the 4:3 because superheroes are big and tall. Like, if you see Superman, you might see him horizontal as he's flying, but when he stands up, I mean, he's going to be more vertical.
Was the format also used for the intended IMAX release?
Yes, that's correct. So I think the story goes that Zack Snyder went to go see a film that had that aspect ratio in IMAX, and so he was like, oh, this is maybe I have an idea. And I know people have seen it in IMAX. There were some special screenings, and I believe when you see it in IMAX, it's actually full screen. So it's a full 4:3, so you won't have black bars on the left and right.
Yes.
So imagine seeing it in IMAX and you get to see Darkseid in his full glory in that big screen. That would have been incredible. And unfortunately, I don't know that maybe sometime in the future we'll have that opportunity.
God willing, yes. I'm jealous of those who have seen it.
But I think that would have been a much more gratifying cinematic experience. It's one thing to watch it at home, on HBO Max, but I would love to see it sometime in IMAX because I think it would definitely be a much more enjoyable experience. But yeah, it didn't bother me too much. It's a little different, but I think it does. You start to kind of get into it once you kind of get into the movie.
Yes.
It doesn't matter as much anymore. So I'm glad that somebody's at least trying new things in the superhero genre because it seems to sometimes be a lot of the same thing.
Yes, a lot of sameness, yes.
So, yeah. Well, I guess we're kind of getting into the home stretch here at the end of the panel. So I guess my question would be, was it worth it? Did we need to see the Snyder Cut get released?
Yes, I did. Yes, I believe it was worth it. If anyone's interested in my opinion, there was an enormous fan base that longed to see the continuation of the story. I knew that I couldn't be the only one. I knew I wasn't unique or special. And so for it to be released, and it paid off in so many ways, especially with the hopes of the fan base that said, oh, we already know it's going to be good. And I don't mean that in kind of a blind loyalty type of perspective, like, oh, we just love anything that Zack Snyder does. But we knew based on the quality of the first two films and the storytelling that it had to. There were those of us who understood that the story had an arc and that Batman v Superman needed to be the Empire Strikes Back of that 3-movie set. That it needed to be kind of the cliffhanger, that it needed to be heavier and darker and a little more brooding, and that there would be a payoff for the 3rd film. So to see it come to fruition, yes, it was hugely gratifying on an emotional level. I believe ultimately, whether we ever hear it was or not, it is hugely gratifying on a financial level. Yeah, it was worth it.
Yeah, that is a weird aspect of this whole HBO Max thing. Normally when companies have a big streaming event that comes out, they'll usually, like they did with Wonder Woman 1984, they said, well, over the weekend, this many people watched it and streamed it, and look at our big numbers. And they didn't really do that with Zack Snyder's Justice League. Nobody really knows. We kind of have an idea based on some other like global streaming platforms how well it did. I mean, it did really, really well in other countries, and it just seems it's a little mind-boggling to me. It's like they didn't want to let people know how well it did, which is a little strange. I personally, if I was running HBO Max, I would want to brag about that personally. That would get some more subscriptions. But there seems to be a strange thing happening behind the scenes with that kind of thing. For me, I know this sounds really silly because it's in some ways silly to be so emotionally connected to some films, but after what happened with Justice League in 2017, there was a little bit of a hole. There was like a weird thing where I felt like something was missing. Like I always wanted to see what was, because we knew pretty early on that there were additional scenes that didn't make that cut. They had some people on Twitter had leaked out some cyborg scenes that weekend to say, hey, there's extra stuff that was not in the movie. And that's I kind of think what sort of got the ball rolling about the Snyder Cut, the release of Snyder Cut movement, because we realized, oh, well, that movie we were presented is not what was intended. And so I think after that, I was like, man, that would be really cool to see whatever he did. I really, if anything, just to see the visuals, just to see like what he intended, even if it was bad, but I always knew it wouldn't be. But but if it was bad, I just wanted to see it. So there was always kind of this weird hole that I had, and so it was nice to just sit down. You know, the day it was released, I cooked some chili, I got some popcorn, I had some chips and salsa. I was like, I'm in for it. I'm here for 4 hours. I know I'm gonna get snacky. And so I just sat down and just enjoyed getting to see what he presented. So I think it's a really big win actually for artistic integrity in filmmaking. And I think it shows the importance of letting filmmakers do their thing.
Absolutely.
Because I think in Hollywood especially, I mean, independent filmmakers probably don't have as much of this problem, but the Hollywood studios really can mandate things and say, no, you need to do it this way, you need to take this out. And they have a lot of control. And I think there was a lot of compromise he originally had to do just to even try to get that, you know, film released in some way even before the tragedy with his daughter. So I think this is a great example that should be studied in film schools, honestly, because it shows the impact of a filmmaker and storytelling and good screenwriting. Music makes such a big difference. How you edit something makes a big difference, because now you actually have 2 versions of the same film, and you can see the choices one filmmaker made. Because I mean, they reshot most of the film for the Justice League version, and then you can see the choices another filmmaker made with the same content, the same characters, and you can see such a big difference in the way that both of those filmmakers chose to make it. So I think it's a really, really good example for filmmakers, for future filmmakers to check out. And so I'm just really happy that it got released and we didn't have to wait a long time. And I think it shows the power of fans. You know, I know some people are hesitant about that because they don't want fans to dictate certain things, but I mean, we were sold a film that, you know, was false advertising back in 2017. So now they're just correcting a mistake, I think. So I was really glad to see it get released on those things, because now I feel a little bit more complete. Of course, the nightmare sequence, we didn't really talk about that, but we know there was more that was supposed to happen, so there's still a little bit of a hole there.
Oh, yes.
For me. But I think at least getting to see what was supposed to be released is helpful and cathartic. But
Mhm.
the nightmare sequence, you could have a whole TV series based on the nightmare world, and the Joker, shows up, and so you could do a whole thing on that. So I kind of wish we could see more of that, because there was a whole, if people don't know, there was a whole 5-film arc that was planned. Zack Snyder had an entire plan for his story, and they did an exhibit in Dallas, and I actually went down there just to see the exhibit, and they had storyboards. He and Jim Lee actually sat down and made storyboards of this entire 5-film arc, and it was going to be an epic adventure. I mean, the Riddler was going to be there trying to figure out the anti-life equation. There was going to be so much set in the nightmare world. And that would have been really, really cool to see, and so different, I think, for the genre of superheroes to see that apocalyptic world. So I don't know. I guess just to end, would you want to see more of the Snyderverse?
Oh yes. I hope we do. I haven't given up hope. I was shocked at the announcement when we were going to get it. So I've learned never say never. I think the power, you spoke about fans, there's a little bit of controversy I know that exists, at least according to the narrative that we're sold, that maybe fans shouldn't have that level of power. I don't think anyone in their reasonable and right mind would advocate fans having a bully pulpit to force things, but fans at the end of the day are consumers, and films are sold on that model. Consumers get to say, yes, we want more of that, we want less of this. And I think that's what's led to, not to chase a rabbit, but the elephant in the room for me is that we're right in the midst of the release of the latest addition to the DCEU. And I watched it yesterday, The Suicide Squad. And I know this is not a panel about the Suicide Squad, but regardless of what you think about that film, here's my concern, is that a year from now, we're gonna look at the growing list of DCEU films, and the biggest moneymakers will continue to be the ones that are piled upon the most by critics, so-called critics and so-called fans. And they're going to be the Snyder films, or those that were most closely related to the Snyderverse. And those that have deviated the further away from that are going to be, in contrast, almost flops financially. I hope the Suicide Squad does not flop financially, but right now it's not trending well. It's not tracking to be the moneymaker that some of the first films. And so my concern is that years down the road, Warner Brothers is going to eventually admit, yeah, we kind of pulled the plug on that too quickly.
Yeah.
And there were plenty of us out there saying, wait, what? Why are you abandoning course right now? Yeah, just stay the course. It'll be okay. But the films that we're continuing to have positive conversations about today and that dominate social media, I'm sorry, they are those 3 Snyder films. And I think time is going to continue to be kind to all 3 of them, even Batman v Superman. I think Batman v Superman has more supporters today, and more who are on board with the vision, especially having seen where the narrative went with Zack Snyder's Justice League. So I'm disappointed for DC, I'm disappointed for Warner Brothers, and I think there's reason to believe that maybe this thing will turn around and we'll be able to see more of this universe.
Yeah, I think the experience with Zack Snyder's Justice League, for me, it shows not to have a bully pulpit as a fan, but also your voice as a fan is important.
It is.
We are the ones spending the money.
Yes.
I bought this t-shirt.
Thank
I
you.
bought a lot of Zack Snyder Justice League merchandise.
Mm-hmm.
And if you vote with your dollars and express to them, this is what I want to see, that can make a difference. And as long as you do it in a civil way and a very
Yes.
nice way, I think that's it's nice. I would want a base. If I was a marketing person,
Mhm.
I would want to know, oh, those people are already bought in. I don't even have to sell them on this too much. So I think fans have a voice,
Yes.
and I think that's one of the lessons of the Snyder Cut is, let people know what you like, and maybe even what you don't like.
Yes, and you have a right to be puzzled if they don't seem to respond.
Yeah.
I think you honestly have a right to scratch your head and say, wow. There's a reason that the hashtag Suck It Warner Brothers started to become popular, because people were a little irritated, a little agitated, like it's like you're so obtuse, you're not even listening, you're not reading the room correctly.
Yeah, don't tell us what we should like.
Mhm.
Listen to what we do like.
Yes.
So yeah,
We'll
so
support it. We'll be there.
yeah, so I think a good way to end this panel. There was so much about the fans. The Snyder Cut movement was so much about the fans. So if you ever tweeted or posted about release the Snyder Cut once, or even expressed it among your friends, I think we're all part of that experience. So it's a very historical thing that has happened with the Snyder Cut. Well, thank you all for coming
Yes,
today, and I
thank
hope
you.
you have a great rest of your day at Atlanta Comic Con, and have fun.